"You're not family anymore, Mother. You're just a burden we've been carrying for too long." My daughter-in-law Brittany's words echoed through the attorney's office as my son Kevin sat beside her, nodding in agreement. I had just buried my husband Walter 3 days ago, and now I was sitting in a cold leather chair, listening to his will being read, while my own son treated me like a stranger. The attorney, Mr. Henderson, cleared his throat uncomfortably. As stated in the will, the house in Denver and the vacation cabin in Aspen are transferred to Kevin Chen. Mrs. Chen receives the 2 dogs, 1 cat, and personal belongings including kitchen items and photo albums. Brittany laughed. That sharp, mocking laugh I had grown to despise over the past 15 years. Perfect. She gets the mutts and the old pictures. We get the real assets. Isn't that fitting, Kevin? My son, my only child, the boy I had raised for 45 years, looked at me with cold eyes. "Mom, Brittany is right. You're 71 years old. You don't need a 4-bedroom house. We have 2 kids to raise. It makes more sense this way." I looked at them both, trying to find any trace of the little boy who used to run into my arms after school, who cried when his goldfish died and made me promise to always be there for him. That boy was gone. In his place sat a 45-year-old man who had let his wife poison him against his own mother. "The dogs are old anyway," Brittany continued, examining her manicured nails. "Biscuit is what, 12? And that fat cat of yours probably doesn't have much time left either. But hey, at least you'll have company in whatever nursing home we find for you." Something inside me broke. Not like glass shattering, but like a chain finally snapping after years of rust. For decades, I had been the understanding mother, the helpful grandmother, the quiet woman who never made waves. But in that moment, watching my daughter-in-law smirk and my son avoid my eyes, I felt a strange calm wash over me. "Fine," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "I'll take my dogs and my cat. They've never lied to me. They've never called me a burden." I stood up and walked toward the door, my dignity the only thing I had left to carry. "Don't forget to take all your junk from the house by Friday," Brittany called after me. "We're having contractors come to renovate. Your old furniture smell is everywhere." I didn't turn around. I just kept walking, one foot in front of the other, until I reached the parking lot where Biscuit and Honey were waiting in my old Toyota Camry. When I opened the door, Biscuit immediately licked my face, and Honey whined softly as if she could sense my pain. At home, Ginger would be waiting by the window, wondering where I had gone. As I drove through the streets of Denver, the city where I had lived for 43 years, I couldn't stop the memories from flooding back. I remembered when Kevin was 8 years old and broke his arm falling off his bicycle. Walter was away on a construction project in Texas, so I drove Kevin to the emergency room alone, held his hand during the x-ray, and slept in a chair beside his bed for 2 nights because he was scared of the dark in the hospital. I remembered when he was 17 and got his girlfriend pregnant. We paid for her medical care, for the abortion she chose to have, for the therapy sessions afterward. We never told anyone, never judged, just supported. That cost us nearly $8,000 and countless sleepless nights. I remembered paying for his college education at Colorado State University. 4 years of tuition, books, housing, and spending money. Walter worked overtime for 3 straight years, and I took on extra tutoring jobs after my regular teaching hours. We calculated it once. $120,000, not including the car we bought him for graduation. When he married Brittany, we paid for the entire wedding. She wanted a destination ceremony in Napa Valley. 75 guests, premium wine, a designer dress that cost $9,000 alone. The final bill was $42,000. Walter dipped into his retirement savings because Kevin begged him, said Brittany would leave him if she didn't get her dream wedding. During their first year of marriage, when Kevin lost his job at the marketing firm, we covered their mortgage for 8 months, $3,200 every month. When Brittany got pregnant with their first child, I took a leave of absence from teaching to help her because she claimed she was too sick to do anything herself. I cooked, cleaned, did laundry, drove her to appointments, and listened to her complain about how difficult her life was. When my grandson Tyler was born, I was the one who got up for the 2 a.m. feedings because Brittany said she needed her beauty sleep, and Kevin was too exhausted from work. When their daughter Emma came 2 years later, I practically moved into their house for 6 months to help. And through it all, Through every sacrifice, every dollar spent, every sleepless night, Brittany treated me like hired help. She criticized my cooking, complained about how I folded the laundry, rolled her eyes when I tried to share stories from my childhood. Kevin never defended me. He just shrugged and said, "That's just how Brittany is, Mom. Don't take it personally." Now, driving through Denver with my 2 dogs in the back seat, I calculated what we had given them over the years. Between the education, the wedding, the mortgage payments, the baby expenses, the loans Kevin never repaid, and the countless smaller gifts, it was well over $300,000. $300,000, and they had just kicked me out of my own home with nothing but my pets and some photo albums. I pulled into the driveway of the small apartment I had rented 2 weeks earlier, when I first sensed that this moment was coming. It was a modest 1-bedroom place on the edge of town, nothing fancy, but it allowed pets and the landlord seemed kind. It would have to be home now. That night, as I sat on the floor of my new apartment surrounded by boxes, Biscuit lay his gray muzzle on my lap, while Honey curled up at my feet. Ginger, my 15-year-old tabby cat, surveyed the space from her carrier with suspicious eyes. These 3 creatures, these loyal souls who had never asked me for anything except food and love, were now my only family. My phone rang. It was Kevin. "Mom, I just wanted to check in. Make sure you got settled okay." "I'm fine, Kevin." There was a pause. "Look, Brittany and I were talking. Maybe you could come over on Sunday for dinner. The kids miss you." I knew what this was. Brittany had realized that without me, she would have to cook Sunday dinners herself. She would have to watch the kids without a free babysitter. The convenience of having me around had finally occurred to her. "No, thank you," I said. "I'm very comfortable here with my family." "Your family? Mom, those are dogs. We're your family." "Are you? Because 3 days after your father's funeral, you let your wife call me a burden and took everything your father and I built together. That doesn't sound like family to me." I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but this time, not from fear or sadness. It was something else, something that felt almost like power. The next morning, I began the painful process of sorting through the few boxes of belongings I had managed to take from the house. Most of my clothes, my books, my teaching awards from 35 years in the classroom, all of that was still in the house that was no longer mine. Brittany had given me exactly 3 hours to pack before she changed the locks. Among the few things I grabbed was a wooden recipe box that Walter had given me on our 25th wedding anniversary. It was hand-carved, beautiful, filled with recipes passed down from his Chinese grandmother. I had treasured it for years, not for the recipes, which I had never actually used, because they were written in a mix of Chinese and broken English, but because Walter had seemed so earnest when he gave it to me. "Keep this safe," he had told me that night, holding my hands and looking into my eyes. "It's more valuable than you know." I had always assumed he meant sentimental value, but as I opened the box that morning, something felt different. The card seemed thicker than I remembered, and on the back of one, in Walter's careful handwriting, I saw a series of numbers I didn't recognize. My heart started beating faster. I pulled out more cards. Each one had numbers on the back. Coordinates, account numbers, access codes, things that meant nothing to me but clearly meant something important to Walter. I called the only person I could think of who might understand. Samuel Park, Walter's college roommate who had become a financial advisor after their engineering days. Samuel had always been kind to me, and Walter had trusted him completely. "Peggy," Samuel said when he answered, his voice warm with concern. "I've been meaning to call. I am so sorry about Walter. He was my best friend for 50 years. Samuel, I need your help. I found something in the recipe box Walter gave me. Numbers, codes. I don't understand what they mean." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Samuel spoke slowly. "Peggy, Walter came to see me about 6 months ago. He made me promise that when you called, and he was certain you would eventually call, I would tell you everything. Can you come to my office in Phoenix? There are things I need to show you in person." "Phoenix? That's a 12-hour drive." "I know. But trust me, Peggy, it will be worth it." 3 days later, I loaded Biscuit, Honey, and Ginger into my car and drove to Phoenix. Samuel's office was in a modest building in Scottsdale, nothing flashy, just professional and clean. When he saw me, Samuel hugged me tight. Then he closed the door to his office and sat me down with a seriousness that made my stomach flutter with nervous anticipation. Peggy, what I'm about to tell you is going to change everything. Walter loved you more than anything in this world. He also knew exactly what kind of person your daughter-in-law is. He watched her manipulate Kevin for years, watched her treat you like garbage, and it broke his heart. Samuel opened a thick folder on his desk. 22 years ago, when Walter worked on that infrastructure project in San Francisco, he invested his bonus in a little startup that was just getting off the ground, a company called Amazon. I blinked, not understanding. Amazon? The delivery company? The very same. Walter bought shares when they were practically worthless, and he never sold them. Not when they went up a little, not when they went up a lot. He just held them in a brokerage account that he put in your name only. Samuel slid a paper across the desk. The numbers on it made no sense to me at first. Then I counted the zeros. That can't be right, I whispered. It's right, Peggy. Those Amazon shares are now worth approximately $1.2 million. But that's not all. He pulled out more documents. Walter also invested in Microsoft in the late 90s, Apple in 2001, Google when it went public. He was careful, conservative, but consistent. He put everything in your name, in accounts that only you can access with the codes on those recipe cards. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold the papers. How much? Total? Samuel took a deep breath. Between the stock portfolio, the certificates of deposit, and a property he purchased in Scottsdale that's fully paid off, your total assets are approximately $2.4 million. The room spun around me. $2.4 million. For 43 years, I had pinched pennies, worried about grocery bills, worn the same winter coat for a decade because we couldn't afford a new one. And all along, Walter had been quietly building a fortune that would ensure I never had to depend on anyone again. There's more, Samuel said gently. The recipe cards contain access codes to 3 safe deposit boxes, one in San Francisco, one in Seattle, and one here in Phoenix. Walter asked me to help you retrieve what's inside when you were ready. What's inside them? I don't know exactly, but Walter said it would explain everything. Over the next week, Samuel helped me access the 3 safe deposit boxes. In San Francisco, I found gold coins and a letter from Walter explaining that he had started buying them in the 80s as a hedge against uncertainty. Their current value was approximately $180,000. In Seattle, I found property deeds for 2 small rental apartments that Walter had purchased 20 years ago and had been quietly collecting rent on ever since. The apartments were worth over $400,000 combined, and there was $70,000 sitting in an associated bank account from years of accumulated rent. In Phoenix, I found the keys to a beautiful 3-bedroom townhouse in Scottsdale with a backyard perfect for dogs. The townhouse was fully paid off and had been maintained by a property management company that Walter had hired years ago. It was waiting for me, exactly as he had planned. But the most precious thing I found was a letter. My dearest Peggy, Walter wrote, if you are reading this, then I am gone and things with Kevin have turned out as I feared. I watched our son become someone I don't recognize, watched him let Brittany turn him against the woman who gave him life. I tried to talk to him, but he was too far gone. So I did the only thing I could. I made sure you would never need him. I made sure you would have choices. Please don't be angry that I kept secrets. I did it because I knew that if you knew about this money, you would have given it all to Kevin, and Brittany would have found a way to take every penny. This is my final gift to you. The gift of freedom. Go live the life you deserve, my love. You have earned every moment of peace. Forever yours, Walter. I cried for hours. Not tears of sadness, but tears of overwhelming gratitude for a man who had loved me so completely, so thoughtfully, that he had planned for my happiness even after his death. I moved into the Scottsdale townhouse the following week. It was perfect. The backyard had a covered patio where Ginger could watch birds, and a grass area where Biscuit and Honey could rest in the shade. The neighborhood was quiet, filled with other retirees who smiled and waved when they saw me walking my dogs. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. Of course, the peace didn't last long. 2 weeks after I moved, my phone rang. It was Brittany. Mother Chen, she said, using the formal address she always used when she wanted something. "Kevin and I need to discuss something important with you. There seems to be some confusion about Walter's estate. Our accountant found some irregularities. We think there might be hidden assets that belong to the family." I smiled. So they had finally figured out that something was missing. "I don't know what you're talking about, Brittany. Don't play games with me. Walter was an engineer for 40 years. He had a pension. He had savings. There's no way the house and cabin were everything. Where is the rest of the money? Whatever money Walter had is exactly where he wanted it to be." There was a sharp intake of breath. "You're hiding something. Kevin and I have a right to know." He was Kevin's father. "And he was my husband for 46 years. Whatever decisions Walter made about his finances are between him and me." I hung up. 10 minutes later, Kevin called. "Mom, please. Brittany is really upset. She's convinced you're hiding Dad's money somewhere. She wants to hire a lawyer." "Then let her hire a lawyer," I said calmly. "Everything I have is legally mine, in my name, and has been for over 20 years. No judge in the country will touch it." "But Mom, we're struggling. The renovation on the house cost more than we expected. Emma needs braces. Tyler wants to go to private school. We could really use some help." I thought about all the times I had helped, all the checks I had written, all the sacrifices I had made, all the nights I had spent worrying about their problems. And I thought about how Brittany had looked at me in that attorney's office, sneering as she called me a burden. "Kevin, do you remember what you said to me 3 weeks ago? You said I wasn't family anymore. You said I was just a burden. Well, I took your words to heart. If I'm not family, then your financial problems are not my concern." "Mom, I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did. And more importantly, Brittany meant it, and you sat there and let her say it. You let her take everything your father and I worked for, and you didn't say a single word in my defense." There was silence on the other end. "I'm done, Kevin. I'm done being used, being disrespected, being treated like an inconvenience. I have my dogs. I have my cat. I have a beautiful home and enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life. That's all I need." A month later, I received a legal notice. Brittany had made good on her threat. She was suing me, claiming that I had exercised undue influence over Walter during his illness and had fraudulently transferred assets into my name. The lawsuit was absurd. Walter had been making these investments for over 2 decades, long before he ever got sick. But Brittany was convinced that if she made enough noise, she could bully me into a settlement. I hired a lawyer named Patricia Reeves, a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in estate disputes. When she reviewed my documents, she actually laughed. "Mrs. Chen, your husband was brilliant. Every single asset is clearly documented as yours, with paper trails going back decades. This lawsuit has no merit whatsoever. Not only will we win, but we can countersue for legal harassment and defamation." The case was dismissed within 3 months. The judge actually scolded Brittany's attorney for wasting the court's time with a frivolous claim. And when Patricia filed our countersuit, Brittany and Kevin were ordered to pay my legal fees, which totaled $37,000. The day I received the court's final judgment, I sat on my patio in Scottsdale with a glass of iced tea, watching the Arizona sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Biscuit lay at my feet, his breathing slow and peaceful. Honey was chasing a lizard along the fence. Ginger sat on my lap, purring contentedly. My phone buzzed. A text from Kevin. "Mom, please. Brittany is talking about divorce. She blames me for all of this. I don't know what to do. Can we please talk?" I stared at the message for a long moment. Part of me, the mother part that had loved Kevin unconditionally for 45 years, wanted to reach out, to fix things, to make everything better like I always had. But then I remembered Brittany's cruel laugh, Kevin's cold eyes, the way they had dismissed me as worthless, as a burden, as nothing more than an inconvenience to be discarded. I put down the phone without responding. 6 months have passed since I moved to Scottsdale. Biscuit passed away peacefully last month. At the age of 14, surrounded by love, I buried him in the backyard under a jacaranda tree and planted flowers on his grave. 2 weeks later, I adopted a senior dog from the local shelter, a sweet beagle named Maple who had been abandoned by her family when they moved. She fit right in. I also joined a book club, started taking pottery classes at the community center, and made friends with my neighbors, particularly a wonderful woman named Grace who has 3 rescue cats and a wicked sense of humor. Kevin finally called last week. Brittany had filed for divorce, just as he predicted. She claimed half of everything in the settlement, including the house and cabin that she had once gloated about taking from me. Kevin is now living in a small apartment, struggling to pay child support, and wondering how his life fell apart so quickly. "Mom," he said, his voice broken, "I'm so sorry. I was so blind. Brittany manipulated me for years, and I let her turn me against you. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed you to know that I finally see the truth." I listened to him cry, and I felt something I didn't expect. Not anger, not satisfaction, just a quiet sadness for the boy he used to be. "Kevin," I finally said, "I don't hate you. I will always love you, because you are my son. But love doesn't mean allowing yourself to be mistreated." It took me 71 years to learn that lesson. I hope you learn it faster than I did. We talk occasionally now, short conversations where he tells me about his therapy sessions, and I tell him about my pottery class. We're not close, not like we used to be, but there's a fragile honesty between us that didn't exist before. As for Brittany, I heard she's already dating a wealthy businessman she met at the gym. Some people never change. I'm sitting on my patio as I share this story, watching Honey and Maple play in the yard, while Ginger naps in her favorite sunny spot. The Arizona evening is warm and peaceful, and I can hear birds singing in the neighbors' orange trees. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how things turned out with Kevin, if I wish I had done something differently, and I always tell them the same thing. I regret nothing. For 43 years, I lived for others. I sacrificed my needs, my wants, my dreams, for my husband, my son, my grandchildren. And I don't regret that sacrifice, because it was made from love. But I've also learned that love without boundaries is not love at all. It's just another form of servitude. And at 71 years old, I finally gave myself permission to stop serving and start living. My husband knew me better than I knew myself. He knew that I would give away everything if I could, that I would sacrifice my own comfort to make Kevin and Brittany happy, so he protected me from my own generosity. He gave me the gift of independence, wrapped in recipe cards and hidden in safe deposit boxes across 3 cities. Every morning, when I wake up in my beautiful townhouse with my loyal companions beside me, I thank Walter for loving me enough to set me free. If my story teaches anything, it's this. Family is not defined by blood, but by loyalty. The people who truly love you will never ask you to diminish yourself for their benefit. And it's never too late to discover your own worth. I spent 70 years being the person everyone else needed me to be. Now I'm spending whatever time I have left being the person I want to be. And you know what? She's pretty wonderful. If my story touched your heart and you agree that it's never too late to start over, show me by giving this video a like. I'm curious, what city and what time are you listening from? Write it in the comments. If you'd like to support my journey, you can send a small donation. Thank you for sharing your precious time with me. For more stories like this, check my other videos and subscribe to my channel. There are 2 new stories on screen that I'm sure you'll love. Click one and start listening.